Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies, where we explore all things cinema. So this video was inspired by a comment Joseph McBride made, the film historian and former film teacher, and he was a screenwriter as well. He made a comment about the New Hollywood movement not having a lot of female-driven films. And I hadn't really thought of it before, but I thought, yeah, that's true. You know, when we think of the New Hollywood movement, we often think of the male actors who broke through with the likes of Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate, Gene Hackman in The French Connection, Al Pacino in The Godfather, Robert De Niro in Mean Streets, Jack Nicholson in Five Easy Pieces, and that's just to name a few. And I was kind of racking my brains, where were the great female-driven films, and why is it that in the 30s and 40s, and even 50s and 60s, there were always great female-driven films. Now, of course, the imbalance between male and female movie stars, for all, with the exception of a few years of Hollywood history, has been male dominant, which of course has not been fair. But with that being said, there were a few years, I just got the stats here, from 1930 to 1934, women stars outnumbered men in 3 years and matched them in 1. And they also matched, female stars also matched male stars in 1938. And I thought that was really interesting. So he asked Francois Truffaut, Joseph, about this, and he said, Truffaut did an interview with me for Daily Variety, in which I asked him to reflect on why there were so few good roles for women in 1970s Hollywood. He said he thought Hollywood was uncertain how to react to the women's liberation movement, so they eliminated the problem by not focusing on women. Which is an interesting theory. He went on to say in a separate post, Joseph, on Facebook, as we talked a little bit more about it, Molly Haskell, in her book From Reverence to Rape, The Treatment of Women in the Movies, discusses how during the 1930s, when going to the movies was a habit for the whole family, women often made the choices of what movies to see. So there were many great female stars who dominated the screen in that era. The 1970s, by contrast, was a bleak period for women in American movies. Again, just got me thinking, and I just made just a short list of some of the great stars in the 30s and 40s, 50s, and 60s. And, just to name some, you have, Joan Fontaine in a film like Rebecca. You have Norma Shearer, as well as Joan Crawford in The Women. And then you have Joan Crawford in Mildred Pierce. You have Bette Davis in All About Eve. You have Barbara Stanwyck in Babyface. You also have Joan Fontaine in Letter from an Unknown Woman. You have Olivia de Havilland in The Heiress. You have Greta Garbo and Anna Christie. Of course, they were in a lot more. They were in other female-driven films as well. And then, just to name some of the other stars who were also in female-driven films, you have Katharine Hepburn, Marlene Dietrich, Marilyn Monroe, Audrey Hepburn, Elizabeth Taylor, Natalie Wood. And this is just some, and just naming a few of the films. And sure, there were female stars in the 70s. You think Jane Fonda, you think Ellen Burstyn, you think Goldie Hawn, Sissy Spacek. But, when I'm talking, I'm not talking in terms of whether they were the co-lead in a movie where it's their story, but also shared with a male protagonist. In the case of something like Clute, which is mostly about Jane Fonda's character, but also about Sutherland's character and their relationship. So I'm talking female-driven, where the story is about the women and the men are mostly, or not even mostly, are the supporting parts. And I sort of rack my brains, and yeah, there are some. But there are some that people talk about, including I'm sure a couple that I'm going to mention today. But there are others that are really underrated that people don't talk about. So I just wanted to touch on four really good ones. Again, from the New Hollywood movement, and for people who might be thinking of the films of John Cassavetes with his wife Gena Rowlands, those were independent films. You think A Woman Under the Influence, Opening Night, these are independent films. And yes, where Gena Rowlands it's mostly her story. A Woman Under the Influence, it is probably half and half between her and Peter Falk as character. Same with Minnie and Malskowitz. But actually, Minnie and Malskowitz was a studio film. Opening Night was completely independent. And there are other great independent film examples as well, like Barbara Loden's Wanda. Then you have the film Girlfriends from 1978, which was directed by Claudia Weil. Those are also examples of female directors, where the studio system in the decade, you really only had Elaine May directing studio produced movies, but her films are about men. And then you have also Joan Micklin Silver, who did movies like Chilly Scenes of Winter, Between the Lines, Hester Street. It's also interesting if you look in Europe, for example, where Ingmar Bergman's movies are often about women. You look in the 70s, like Autumn Sonata, Cries and Whispers, and then you have someone like Chantal Akerman with Jean Diamant, which is a brilliant film. And you go over to Australia, you have a film like My Brilliant Career, which was directed by Gillian Armstrong. You have a movie like India Song from 1975, which was directed by Marguerite Duras. I hope I have that pronounced correctly. So yeah, I mean, you go into foreign films, and there are more that stand out that people revere today. But let's take a look at some notable exceptions. And the first one I would love to start with, I only heard about this film in the last couple of years, but it's called T.R. Baskin from 1971. This was directed by Herbert Ross, and it was written by Peter Hyams. I'll read a short synopsis. An enthusiastic young woman runs away to Chicago to start a new life. She is soon confronted with the emotional coldness of the big city and has to search for her place in the scheme of things. I just want to give a shout out to Fun City for releasing it on Blu-ray. I have the Blu-ray here, which is a really beautiful restoration that was done. Has some good special features on it as well. Highly recommend getting it if you love this film. I also noticed that Trailers from Hell did a video on it before this Blu-ray was released, and they mentioned how it was at that time, before the Blu-ray, was not an easy film to find. And I really love Candice Bergen, because I've seen the film a couple of times now, and she's so subtle but also has this quirky goofball quality. And the interview with Peter Hyams, the screenwriter, which is on the Blu-ray, he said they became really good friends, and they're still good friends to this day, and that she has a real goofball quality about her. It's no surprise that she later would do something like Murphy Brown for a number of years, a comedic sitcom. But she was in really good films at this time, something like Carnal Knowledge, which I love. But it was great to see her in this, and she's so subtle and quirky, but also has a real depth. And I read that some of the criticisms she gets over the years is that people found her to be wooden, and I don't find that. I think it's just that she could do so much with the smallest of looks, and I don't see how you could watch this film and think that she's wooden. There's a great range of humor and despair, and just her deadpan as she's, if people are saying something that she finds insane, just the smallest looks on her face, exactly what she's thinking every minute of the film. And what I really appreciate about this film is that it's this young woman moving to the big city, in this case Chicago. And when a lot of movies that depict, people moving from a small town into a big city, it's often how amazing a city like New York and LA and New York is. And which is true. There is a lot of amazing things about big city, but this film focuses on all the hard struggles that go into when you move, and I know myself. I mean, I'm from Toronto, but I grew up in the suburbs of Toronto, and the first time I moved out, I moved to London, England, and so a lot of the things that I see TR struggling with here, I see those. I had the exact same struggles, and I had this romanticized view of London in my head. And again, even though some of those things were true, and then I discovered other great things about being there and being alone for the first time and everything. I didn't anticipate so many of the hard things, like finding a place to live, and how expensive everything is, and how busy it is, and the fact that people don't seem to have much regard for one another in big cities because they're always in a rush and they're always working, and there's a real coldness and loneliness that one experiences as a young person moving for the first time, and you really see this. You really see this in the film, and I think that is utilized really, really well, because everything that she had in her mind, to go there and find some great achievements and perhaps be the toast of the town, and this is not the reality. The film has some flaws. I mean, for example, it's so interesting that a film that's all about this woman has her co-stars, but they're supporting parts. There's Peter Boyle and James Caan, who played such tough guys in that decade. And then here they are in this real sort of film that's all about a woman. And this will sound like a contradiction, because here I am talking about how women weren't utilized as well as they could have in this period, and maybe addressing things about the women's movement and stuff. And what I'm about to say is going to sound like a contradiction, but in this film, they lean so heavily on her, which is good. I'm not complaining. But on the flip side, then they neglected the men so much that the men really didn't have. It was sort of things about the men where motives were kind of thin, and their reactions are, as a result, are strange. For example, she's having a hard time meeting a man, TR, and then she meets James Caan's character, and they have this great Larry Moore, and they have this great night together, and she's so happy. And then in the morning, he puts money in her pocket. And he goes, just for your cab fare. And then she realizes that, he thinks that I'm a prostitute, and she runs out. And I just thought, I mean, I know that they just met and they went to bed right away, but why he would have thought that, it was very strange to me, because she's not behaving and even remotely as, I'm thinking maybe as a conventional, the way we look at prostitutes, maybe in a conventional way where it's purely transactional. She is actually really opening up to him, and it becomes personal, and she's interested in him, and she's being very real. So why he would have thought that is very strange, unless maybe we could have seen the motivation behind that, if he's self-destructive or something, or maybe it was a way to get rid of her. I mean, we find out that he has kids and a family, and he's divorced. So but we don't find anything out, and then it starts where he runs into Jack Mitchell, who Peter Boyle plays, and he's in town from Chicago, and they run into each other, and he's married, but he's looking for a prostitute while he's in town, and so Larry gives him TR's number, so the film is actually told, and so TR meets him in a hotel. And again, they are opening up to one another, and they have this connection. So it's very strange, because it's you never see Peter Boyle's character Jack ever say, are you a prostitute? You don't see him ever doubt it or ask about it. It's sort of thinly motivated, and the reactions seem sort of uneven and out of place. But aside from that, I can forgive the flaws, because I still think it's a great performance. And Candice Bergen, again, she has this scene towards the end, where she, she's so lonely that she calls her parents, and she's trying so hard not to show how upset she is, that she winds up sort of breaking down. I was looking at some of the reviews at the time because the film didn't do very well, and Roger Ebert, who's from Chicago, I think he took it personally that they were saying Chicago was so horrible, and he was like, yeah, Chicago is really hard and everything, but it's also great, and he lists some of the reasons why it's great. But I mean, I think he's, I don't think a film necessarily has to show the whole side of something. You can just focus on a certain point of view about something, and showing that a city can be hard, particularly for a young woman in 1970. I thought that was a very interesting angle, which I hadn't seen before. So if you haven't seen that, highly recommend checking it out. After that, we're going to jump into 1977. This is The Turning Point, which is also directed by Herbert Ross. It was written by Arthur Laurents. It starred Anne Bancroft and Shirley MacLaine. I'll read a short synopsis. When her daughter joins a ballet company, a former dancer is forced to confront her long ago decision to give up the stage to have a family. I really enjoyed this film because, as someone who's in the arts himself, it's really interesting to see this perspective from someone who quit being a ballet dancer because she got pregnant and had a family, who Shirley MacLaine plays. And then on the flip side, you have someone like Anne Bancroft's character, Emma Jacqueline, who didn't quit and didn't have a family, but she gave everything to her career, and now she's sort of doubting whether maybe that was the best decision. And she's also an aging dancer, so she's sort of gradually being pushed out, unfortunately. But I thought this was really, really good, with amazing performances from Anne Bancroft and Shirley MacLaine. They have this one fight at one point that gets so vicious as they're screaming at each other from past resentments. And then it gets physical, but then from there they sort of stop and laugh, like, what the hell are we doing? We're actually hitting each other. And it just felt so real to me. It was just really spontaneous and incredible, beautiful performances from both of them. But it shows these mixed feelings because, Dee Dee, who Shirley MacLaine plays, she doesn't regret her decision. But she has doubts. Did I do the right thing? And then Emma Jacqueline is the same thing. I don't regret my decision, but I have doubts. And it's those two things clashing as they see each other again. And Dee Dee has a daughter who is very interested in ballet, and she gets into the company that Emma Jacqueline is in. And then there's a jealousy because Emma becomes almost like a mother figure to Amelia, and Dee Dee gets jealous because Amelia is not opening up to her. She falls in love with the real life famous dancer Mikhail Baryshnikov. Oh, I'm probably butchering that. He was actually in a relationship with Jessica Lange for a number of years. Character Yuri, and they fall in love. And she's not opening up to Dee Dee about it because then he ends up breaking her heart, and he's sort of a womanizer, but she opens up to Emma about it, right? So it's just these complex feelings, these mix of emotions, I don't want to spoil too much because this isn't a review, but of course we have this element of there's resentments that pop up from things in the past. It's really, really, really good. This is my first viewing, but I think down the road I should certainly review it. Let's jump back to 1970 with The Puzzle of a Downfall Child, which was released, again, like 1970. It was directed by Jerry Schatzberg. He co-wrote the script with Carole Eastman. Stars Faye Dunaway, Barry Primus, and Vivica Lindfors. Or is it Primus? Apologies. Barry Primus or Primus. Once famous model Lou Andrea Sand recalls her past as she tries to find success in the New York modeling world, her affair with ad exec Mark, her friendship with fashion photographer Aaron Reinhart, and her downward spiral. I just want to give a shout out to Kino, I have it. I should get it on Blu-ray, but I have it on DVD, which is a really thing. This was hard to find for a long time. So this came out in 2020 on DVD and Blu-ray, and it was not an easy film to see before that. So I'm so thankful we have it. There's a great Blu-ray commentary by Daniel Kremer, who's going to be on my show later, actually in March, very soon, and film historian, podcaster Bill Ackerman. So it also has a new interview with Jerry Schatzberg. Yeah, so, if you haven't got the DVD or Blu-ray and you're a fan of the film, highly recommend getting it. But this, there's not many films that could achieve what this film achieves, because it's really a stream of consciousness, and it all takes place in the past. From the, at the beginning, it's Barry Primus's character, Aaron, and Faye's character Lou. She lives like alone in this remote cabin, and he's interviewing her about her life, and now she's older, and it also explores, and I know I've heard Jerry Schatzberg say this in the past, it explores sort of how models get pushed out once they get to a certain age, which connects to what I said with the turning point with Anne Bancroft's character. She's getting older, so they push her out. So that sort of ageism at a certain age. And so now that she's getting older, from what we see, it looks as though her modeling career is over. And so she's looking back on her life. But, I've seen this film a decent amount of times, and I've always loved it. But it always made me feel, after it was over, like, did I just watch that? Like, it just felt... It stuck with me. I know this probably doesn't make sense, but it stuck with me, but it felt like I didn't watch it. And then I realized on my last viewing, it's because, it's so dreamlike. It's this stream of consciousness, and things that Lou is talking about didn't necessarily happen. So we're seeing a different thing than she's telling us. So she's not exactly a reliable narrator in that sense. For example, she talks about falling in love with this much older man at 15, but then what we see in the flashbacks is that he raped her, but she never says that happened. And then later on, she has in the flashback, because Aaron Reinhardt is a friend of hers, and he's a photographer, and then eventually they have sex one night. And at the end of the film, the last thing she asks him is, were we ever together? And we were never together, right? And then he goes, yeah, we were. So, it's like maybe she just doesn't remember certain things, and she doesn't remember things the right way or whatever. And we're all like that. We maybe remember things in a way that didn't necessarily happen, or we lie, right? About things. And so I just the way the stream of consciousness is really interesting. She gets into a relationship with this guy Mark, who Roy Scheider plays. Interesting again, like in the case of T.R. Baskin, James Caan, and Peter Boyle, like guys who played tough guys in the 70s. Scheider also played really tough guys in the 70s, but just before he became a star like the other two, he was in this female driven film. So she's in a relationship with him, and then they were going to get married, and then she stands him up. So we see two versions of the way he reacts. He's hostile naturally and tries to find out why she did it, and we see that, but then we see him hit her. And push a door against her as he storms out. So it's like, well, what happened? Was he violent or was he not violent, right? And so the film is full of that. And just Adam Hollander, who was the DOP, he was also the DOP on Schatzberg's next film, Panic in Needle Park, as well as Midnight Cowboy. This an amazing cinematographer. Not only could he capture the grit of New York in something like Midnight Cowboy, he can also capture the glamour of the fashion photography world, the beauty industry, and Puzzle of a Downfall Child. So many of the images in this film I want to just hang on my wall. It's really, really beautiful. So it's a remarkable, complex portrait of a woman who who it looks as though even, is from what we saw in the flashback that she was raped, and she's got issues with taking a lot of taking different medication for anxiety and stuff like that, and she's drinks a lot, and she gets into these complex relationships with men, and again, of course, being pushed out of the industry, and how devastating that is, and she has mental health issues. You could see it a million times and pick up on so many things, because if you look away from this film for a second, you will be lost or confused, because it is very dreamlike, and it's all takes place in her head as she tells the story. And Faye Dunaway is amazing in this film. I mean, she's, it's some people say, and apparently even Joan Crawford said this, and of course, she went on to play Crawford in Mommy Dearest, that she may be one of the last of the glamorous female stars, because she has that look, and she has those qualities of the glamorous stars of the 30s and 40s, but just the range she has, and the depth she can go to, and of course being drop dead gorgeous helps for when you're playing a model, so yeah, she's phenomenal in the film. Last up, this is number 4. I always used to do 5 films. Now I do 4, because I'm doing like Letterboxd. I like the 4. I like doing 4. This I've reviewed before, but I would love to touch on. Again, this is a film that's controversial. Looking for Mr. Goodbar, which finally just came out. Vinegar Syndrome, thank you. This was a film that people long awaited to be restored. This was directed by Richard Brooks. It was written by Judith Rosner and Richard Brooks. It starred Diane Keaton, Richard Gere, and Tuesday Weld. Synopsis: dedicated schoolteacher Teresa Dunn spends her nights cruising bars looking for males with whom she can engage in progressively dangerous extreme sexual encounters. I don't know if that's accurate. This is this is a synopsis off IMDb. This, of course, was based on a true story, and from what I read, the woman it's based on was addicted to danger, and whereas they don't make that necessarily clear in this, not that they had to, it suggested that she's at least intrigued or attracted to it. I don't know if she's necessarily looking for dangerous situations as she gets into dangerous situations, but whether or not that's what she's looking for when we talk about looking for Mr. Goodbar is really up to the audience, because people really look at this film as a message film, I think. And I think I have conflicting feelings about that, because what we see at the end is that she gets murdered, and it's brutal. She gets raped and murdered by Tom Berenger's character Gary, who she hooks up with, who she just meets on New Year's and hooks up with, engaging in a one-night stand, which we see happens with other men in the film. And he kills her, and so some people think that it was regressive, and it was criticizing the women's movement, and we even see in the film years earlier on Christmas Eve, also New Year's Eve, which is also when she gets murdered in the future. She's watching this news bulletin about the women's liberation movement, and one of the things, of course, that they wanted was sexual freedom, right? And so some people think this was regressive because this woman who wants sexual freedom is killed, so it's like a punishment. See, women, you want sexual freedom, this was what's going to happen to you. I don't quite see it that way. I think it's more that if we're looking at it from a message perspective, that it's sort of like, well, why do women have to be so worried about getting killed if they hook up with someone? Why do they have to be concerned with being harassed? And we do see her men just she sits at a bar and a guy touches her bum. Why do they have to deal with these potential murders or harassments or assaults? So perhaps the film may be suggesting also that, well, women should have these things, and the problem is with us, with men, certain men. Hashtag not all men. I love that. Hashtag not all men. which is, so defensive. We're not talking about everyone, of course, but there certainly is enough men that give too many women a hard time and make going out dangerous for them, and so what. I think I lean more towards that, and also I've read some people felt that it was also homophobic in regards to Gary, the character Gary, who Tom Berenger plays, because he's a homosexual man who looks as though he is not out, and he denies that he's gay, and we see this violent fight he gets into earlier, but we also see him kissing a man at a gay bar. That's played by Richard Bright, by the way, character George. He's actually really good in it. And he denies that he's gay, and so one thing that triggers him is that when he's with Teresa, he can't get an erection, and then she says, okay, it gets awkward, and she's like, she tries to get him to leave, and he refuses to leave. Obviously he wants to prove that he's a quote-unquote man and can perform, and then she says, what do you have to prove? And that sets him off, and actually he gets an erection from the violence, and it's a horrible ending, which is hard to forget. Every time I see it, it's really hard to see, but some people see that as homophobic. I don't necessarily see it as homophobic. I think they were getting at the fact that when people are oppressed by society, then if you tell people that it's wrong to be who they are, they could turn to violence. And so if this man wasn't judged, perhaps, and wasn't criticized, and wasn't sort of discriminated against, then he perhaps wouldn't be this way. With that being said, on the flip side, I guess they were looking for a way to give him a motive to have killed her. So, at the time, this is not long after the Stonewall uprising, and so, gay rights was still fairly new, and so perhaps it's irresponsible to have, made a gay man a killer at that time. I'm not saying that every gay part should be just straight up good people, because we're all flawed, but to have seen at this time a gay man do this is not really helpful, even though it's I think the way it's done in the film is what is done well, but is interesting, but perhaps it's irresponsible. But that's the way. But apart from, if we're looking at it from a message, I really think it is a complex character study of this woman who's coming of age, who on the one hand is a teacher, a great teacher. She's the girl. She's helping this one young girl, African American, whose family's on welfare and they can't afford a hearing aid for her. And she really helps to get her a hearing aid. And this little girl who's really tries to keep to herself, is in her own shell, loves Teresa, and Teresa really brings her out of her shell. And so she's a great teacher. And then the contrast, of course, at night is that she's she's intrigued by the nightlife and by the danger, and she sees porn for the first time, she smokes weed for the first time, and she's dating men, she's having one night stands, and I remember when I first saw this when I was younger, I was like, oh my god, a school teacher doing that's crazy. It's like, but what's crazy about it? We're all, so what if she's a school teacher? It's completely normal for her to have these interests or to have these desires, but like I said, with her relationship with Richard Gere, he's clearly violent, and of course she's this relationship with him, and he begins to blackmail her, and it gets ugly, and he hits her. It's interesting that she would have a one-night stand right after that. With that being said, earlier she also gets into this complex relationship with this character James, who she meets when she's talking to the little girl Amy's mother. He's a welfare officer, and she has this complex relationship with him. and because she has mixed feelings about him because her father likes him. And so she's rebelling. She's getting with men that she knows her father would hate because she has this overbearing Catholic father, and so that has a lot to do with her actions, I think, as well. I mean, it's up to the audience. Perhaps it's more of rebellion because her father's criticizing the women's movement, saying, they're all burning bras, and so maybe it's kind of like, I'm going to sleep with as many men as I want, as a F you to her father. Perhaps you could look at it that way. But if we're leaning into like whether it's a hook that she's addicted to danger, I'm not sure. I mean, it's certainly, after you get into a relationship with something like with Tony, where he was blackmailing her and he's violent and he stalks her, and I would imagine someone might think twice about bringing someone home that you don't know again for a one-night stand. But at the same time, she says to James at her apartment, she goes, men, they're all the same. I'm not quoting directly, but she's like, if you don't give them sex right away, they can get pretty rough. So it's possible that because she's meeting all these various men's at bars and stuff, that she just thinks that that's what men's like. They get she's young, right? So she's still in school at the beginning, and it's not clear how many years we go into the future, but it doesn't seem like it's many years, maybe 5, 5 or so. I mean, Diane Keaton, when she did this, was about 30, 31. So, she also has an affair with her teacher at the beginning. So we see that she's in school. So, I think maybe at most she's 25 by the end. So she's still fairly young, right? And so I like that it's ambiguous and open ending. That is this someone addicted to danger or not? Again, it's really up to the audience. But labels aside, messages aside, I think to me this is a complex portrait of a woman and a coming of age story. And all that goes with that. And it's not just what was happening then, but it's completely relatable now. And Diane Keaton, oh my God, what a performance. She's probably one of my favorite actors. So charming. The range that she has, because she's quirky, but she's also has a real depth. And she can really hold her own with anyone, and she can get really ferocious and tough when she needs to be. But then, like I said, she could be funny and sweet and sexy and seductive. So there's a great range there. So with that, so there you go. That's four movies, and this is some. I may do a part 2 down the road to talk about some more. But please comment below if you've seen any of these movies. Let me know what you think of them. Or if you want me to talk about some from the 70s, again, either distributed or produced or both by the major studios. I'm talking Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox, Columbia, the major studios. If there's any that you would like me to cover in a follow-up video to this one, comment and let me know. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/RobertBellissimo at the movies for full details. You can also leave a donation, or what I call a tip, by clicking the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on that and you can leave a donation if you choose to. Of course, I would greatly appreciate that. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movie logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that. And then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new videos. I would also really appreciate if you leave a comment, share the video, like the video. All of these things create traction onto my YouTube channel and really help share the video far and wide and the channel in general. So thank you so much for doing that, and I will see you all in the next one.